covering all things professional wrestling. A show by members of the Busted Open Nation. Welcome to the Nation's Corner. Here are your hosts, the Nation's Corner crew.
Good evening, Nation's Corner family, friends, and fans. John in South Jersey here. It is 7 p.m. It is Saturday night, and yes, we are live. Just the two of us. There's a song about
Just
that.
Just the two of us.
Right on cue, because... No, keep singing, because it's good. But as you can see, it is me and the wonderful Debhausen, all great and powerful. How are you, Deb? Wine glass in hand.
Big glass in hand.
Look at the big glass on Deb. Anywho, what were we talking about? Oh, yeah, that's right. Professional wrestling. And what a week it was. But first, before we get into all that and wrestling related, please stay tuned to the Nation's Corner socials. Coming up soon, the music industry and world lost a great member. That is the best way I can describe that. Definitely had ties to pro wrestling.
Yeah.
As well. Unfortunately, Rick Derringer passed. Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, the lead singer of the McCoys, with their iconic hit "Hang On Sloopy" from the 60s, left us earlier this week. And our very own Chad from Albany decided to put face to video and give a little memorial and retrospective that will be releasing shortly for you to enjoy and learn about this very talented man and artist. And I guess the music world will be a little less without him around. So when that drops, please check out, because Chad is absolutely our music expert and historian, and will do a fine job with it. So
yeah, I'm actually really interested to see what Chad says, because I really wasn't aware of Rick Derringer, but when the news of his passing came out, and everybody was kind of sharing stories of what they remember or what they liked most from his career, I realized I was kind of like, one of those things where you didn't really know how much a person did until like everything's pointed out to you. Like, I didn't really know who he was until I was like, oh yeah, I know that song, obviously. And so yeah, I'm interested to hear what Chad says about it. He's definitely our music historian. He has way too much information in his brain about music. So,
yes. And if you ever tried
that out.
And just a little inside baseball, if you ever really want to stump Chad, just ask him a geography question.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. But because the
man can talk for hours and hours and hours about music, but don't ask him to go anywhere.
You don't want him to plan a road trip. You really don't. No, not at all. Anywho, let's get to it. We're good, since it's only me and Deb tonight, and since we kind of watch her choke on her wine. Jesus, Wino, how about a sip? I thought you were supposed to sip wine, not guzzle it.
Oh.
All right, good? You good?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm fine.
All right.
I'm fine.
Okay. Well, that is a big glass, so I just have to.
It'll be empty by the end of the show.
It will be. Since it is just me and Deb, along with the rest of the crew, kind of sit together every night on Zoom and talk and watch wrestling and stuff. Deb and I were saying, why not take some of that to the show tonight? And what we're going to talk about specifically is, if you're looking for a rundown from everything that happened this week, no, not really. We're going to touch on a few things here and there, but primarily
not usually what we do here.
Yeah. Primarily the thread's going to be, we all agree that it's an incredible time for wrestling in general, that really, to quote Sam Roberts, anything is possible. Speculate wildly, because most cases it has been happening that way. Specifically, we have a lot of changes within companies as far as rosters, who went where, who went to this place, who came over from that place. Plus, the rosters of the companies themselves are undergoing changes basically right before our eyes on a weekly basis.
On a daily basis.
Yeah, more or less, and then of course you have both people from the bigger companies, showing up on independent shows, showing up on Bloodsport, showing up on GCW, showing up on all these indie promotions. So literally anything is possible right now. And I guess we could go over some basics from the past week.
Let's start with the NXT related news.
Okay.
We had I don't watch NXT. I don't get that channel anymore, so even if I would want to check it out, I can't. So but we were all on Zoom, as you said. We pretty much watch along every night, every show. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there watching like the Goldbergs or whatever the fuck I was watching. And all of a sudden everybody on Zoom goes, "Holy shit!"
Yes.
And I was like, "What?" And so Stephanie McCare lost her title, as everybody knows by now. And that was a major holy shit moment for everyone. Definitely not expected. Obviously, we figured that immediately meant she's moving up to the main roster. And then we got the news yesterday that she's going to be on Raw, which I'm very excited about because Raw is the show I can watch.
Yes.
So yeah, that was a shocker.
Well, it was and coming off a week last week of shockers, especially with NXT. Of course, Trick Williams is now your TNA champion.
Yes.
Defeating, say his name and he appears, Joe Hendry. That bombshell that came out of Battleground, on top of the fact now that Fallon Henley, Casey Jane, is the new women's champion. And now we're getting word, since Adam Pearce was out walking his dog for some reason, and saying, "Oh, by the way, Stephanie McCare is now on Raw and is going to be in a match to qualify for Money in the Bank, or the women's Money in the Bank match on Monday Night Raw." So,
by the way, side note, I love that Adam Pearce delivers like majors, like creative storyline news all the time while he's walking his dog. Like, dude is just out walking his dog, and it's like, I'm gonna record a quick little video with some major news,
right? Yeah, just dropping bombshells left and right. But hey, I'm just out chilling with my dog. It's a nice day. Take the dog for a walk. But but also coming off that, on SmackDown last night, you had Javon Evans, your boy Bouncy himself, in the tag match against the Garzas. But the interesting part to this is, here's an NXT kid on one of the main shows on SmackDown, and his partner is Ray Phoenix, who just came over from AEW with his brother, that guy on Monday night, Penta. That both of them have been exponentially put upward since their arrival in WWE. So that was a very cool thing, that anything can happen at any time. And now it's one of these things that we talk about a lot is, all right, what's next? Now, NXT has a absolutely proven record since its inception, all the way back to original Black and Gold. While they have made their own incredible moments and matches and everything on their own, let's not forget that at its core, at its heart, it's developmental. The people you're seeing in NXT are eventually going to be on and part of the main show rosters and major stories and etc. And this is no different, although it's one of the things. Well, who's next or what's next?
Right.
Because you still have you have a brand new women's champion right now.
Mm-hmm.
You have basically an seemingly unbeatable male champion in Obafemi.
Right.
And you have to look at some point, that guy is way, way too much to just be in NXT. He has main roster written all over him and big impact written all over him on the main roster. So that you have a tag team division now that Fraxium is now challenging for the main tag titles on SmackDown that are former NXT tag champions, and they're in that mix now on SmackDown, especially. Hank and Tank, okay, it works for now, but you have to think there's something coming, and I think that's part of the great kind of interest and anticipation. Not so much what's happening right now. We know what we have right now, but what's next, and especially, and you can speak to this very well, Deb, we're seeing that more in AEW more and more, and that's we were talking about this, and you can expand upon it, but Dynamite opened up Wednesday night with an incredible promo with Will Ospreay, Swerve Strickland, and Hangman Page, and you're looking at all three of these guys have a legitimate claim, and legitimately any one of the three of them could be holding the AEW title.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I any one of them could be the one that beats Moxley. And I'd be like, okay, that's cool. So
yeah. Well, I maintained for months, going back probably to February or March, I have been thinking all along that it was going to be Hangman at All In that beat Moxley. I remember saying it on the show. I remember saying it to you guys on Zoom. And, I think for a little while there, I was like, they seem to be going more towards the Osprey route. And I was like, obviously I love Osprey, and I would have been totally okay with that. But something in me was still like, I still have a feeling that it's going to be Hangman. The Hangman is the guy. Yeah. And even when Dave on Busted Open was saying that there's more of a story with Osprey than with Hangman, I just still had this feeling that Hangman was the one. And I think they did a great job in that opening segment of kind of reminding people a little bit of the history for those that may have forgotten certain details, or new viewers that are just kind of starting to catch up on what's all been happening. I think they did a great job of kind of getting people up to speed and reminding people of certain details from the past. And I think Hangman is the biggest example I can think of in AEW for how his entire 6-year history in AEW all matters. We love to talk about everything matters. That's one of Sam Roberts', rules. We love to talk about that. And specifically with Hangman, but a lot of things in AEW, but definitely with Hangman, that really rings true. Is unlike other people, Hangman has never really had full clear-cut end storyline, re-debut as a new character type of thing. We see a lot of other wrestlers, they have story arcs, and then they might go away for a little bit and come back, new character, new rivalry, new story. Hangman, in the course of his 6-year history in AEW, it's kind of been one continuous saga. He has different rivalries with different people, but overall it is one continuous saga that the previous rivalry and what he went through still matters as
it carries forward.
It carries forward, and this is one of the biggest examples of that. That even in the promo segment prior to Double or Nothing with Hangman and Ospreay, where they shared a beer, even commentary, and I think Dave mentioned it on Busted Open, like in a prior version of Hangman's character, you know, he was the beer drinker. He was always drinking beer on the show, grabbing audience members' beers. You know, the whole story arc with the Young Bucks where Hangman was like out of control, drinking too much. And so that factored into that promo with Ospreay, that Hangman has prior, you know, kind of issues, if you want to call it, with drinking beer on screen. That factored into the Wednesdays segment as well, all of his history.
And you're right. I agree 100%. It's not been like a story arc with Adam Page, but he is a very different performer than what we first saw when he first came in. It's a long way from the first time he challenged Jericho, or they're doing the inaugural. He came riding in on a horse with the Dark Order chasing him, which was great at the time. It was like, wow, this is really cool. You know, had the big cowboy shit, the traffic warning signs flashing and all that. But this is a very different character. You know, he also wasn't a felon back then. Let's not forget that.
No,
he burned the man's house down.
Yeah.
But anyway,
and that all matters in this as well. That's all factored in. We're not forgetting about it.
Yeah, and we saw that, even them see them tie that together with the Swerve Ospreay face-to-face during that promo. You know, Swerve saying, I'll never trust him. I'll never do anything with him. You know, he's on his own. But, and back to my original point is AEW, I know you and I disagree on the Death Riders, but the story, I don't think, is Moxley and the Death Riders anymore. It's who's going to be that guy that take down Moxley or take down the Death Riders. Honestly, and where is it coming from?
For a while, and people just are starting to take notice.
Well,
like, this story hasn't been about the Death Riders in quite a while. It's about everything going on around them.
And that's, you know, because you had three guys in the ring to open Dynamite. You had Will Ospreay, Hangman Page, and Swerve Strickland.
Yeah.
You have MJF, who now hurts people. Why? Because he wants his BBB back.
Yeah.
Okay. You have Mr. High Altitude himself, Darby Allin, lurking out there somewhere. And there's probably 3 or 4 other people that you can see kind of on the fringe making moves. As much as I hate to admit it, even Ricochet is starting to, you know, saying, all these people are teaming up together. Now I need to get me a crew. I need to get me a faction to get myself up to where I want to be. Yeah. And it's not for a lack of titles in AEW. God knows both companies, AEW and WWE, have more than enough titles.
Yeah.
It's how they develop who that person is going to be, and then how they get to that championship or to that title.
Yeah.
And
isn't that more realistic that you have so many people in the company that they want that top championship?
Sure.
You know, I think that's way more realistic than just having, you know, one specific rivalry with the champion or the championship. That is the top champion, the top title. Everybody should want it. Everybody should be gunning for it. Yeah. Everybody should be trying to take down Mox and take it for themselves. That's more realistic in my eyes as a fan watching. And I think really, if you think about it with Mox, like, you know, we've talked a lot about his cryptic promos, and a lot of times, like, you know, his promos, he talks and, you know, it's mysterious. We don't really understand what he means or what he's talking about or what his intentions are. But if you think about it, if you go back and think about some of his previous promos, he talked about saving AEW. He talked about that a lot of the younger wrestlers, weren't hungry enough. That they didn't want it enough, that there wasn't that motivation, that drive to be the best. And he's talked over the course of multiple promos over the last 7-8 months he's been champion. He's talked about that his goal is to bring that back to AEW. The AEW lost its way, and his goal was to instill in the other wrestlers, in the younger wrestlers specifically, that drive to be the best, that motivation, that I'm not going to stop until I'm the top guy, and competing amongst all these other people to be the top guy. Well, isn't that what's coming to fruition now?
Sure.
Isn't that what's happening?
That's absolutely one way to look at it. Absolutely. And as critical as I've been of Moxley and the Death Riders, you're absolutely right, because I don't want to say they swerved this or anything, but Moxley kind of spelled it out, and now we're starting to see that. And that shows me a lot of things, not just about Moxley and the Death Riders, but AEW in general. Slowly but surely, they're figuring it out. And that, to a certain extent, banger match after banger match after banger match after banger match makes for great entertainment in the moment.
Yeah.
But to get the people, and hey, we can't deny the changes AEW has made, moving to smaller venues, not trying to fill bigger arenas and all that stuff. It's worked. The crowds are more lively. The crowds are there. They're engaged the whole show. Viewership is up. And they're really, like I said, they're figuring it out. But also, stories matter. Stories are the connective tissue between banger match after banger match. We know, as Nick Nemeth famously said, if you're going to sit and watch a 31-hour or AEW pay-per-view, you're going to be entertained for most of that time. But, and he's right, they do go long, but, you get great matches. You get great, and you're starting to see now either endings or continuations of great stories with AEW pay-per-views, and which is what they, again, it's a very different product you're seeing now than what you saw 5 years ago when they first started. And like I said, I'm glad to see that they're figuring it out, and whatever Tony is doing or allowing them to do, we'll keep doing it, because it's working.
Exactly.
It is absolutely working.
This year in 2025 specifically, since they started on Max, since they started moving to the smaller venues, we've seen a big change. But I'd say even going back to the later half of last year, for a lot of fans that may have soured on the show with all the Punk drama and, lots of stuff that happened during that time. I think, that's like all in the past. Like nobody's even like, that's not even a thought in anybody's head anymore. It's a different product now. There's been a lot of newcomers to the roster in the past, year or so that are really kind of, showing that they add something to the product, and it's really showing. It's showing in the fan excitement. I think the fan base is more excited about the product than in quite a long time, and we're seeing a lot of people, even just within our group. There's a bunch of people in our group that, were kind of meh about AEW for a while, and now are starting to be like, okay, this is a fun show. This is entertaining. I'm into the story. I want to see where it goes. So I think this is definitely, for people who aren't quite like caught back into it yet, this is the time to catch up, especially on the road to All In. Like,
yes,
I think this summer, and AEW tends to do pretty well over the summers. They usually just have a string of really good shows over the summers. But this All In, I think, is it's going to be a big one for AEW.
Yeah, they're definitely building to what All In traditionally has been and should be for AEW. It's their statement show. It's their WrestleMania.
Yeah. Speaking of, sorry, I just had the thought just popped into my head. I saw someone on Blue Sky mention this the other day, and I thought it was such a great idea that this needs to come to fruition. So I'm putting it out in the universe for other people to hear it. Hangman for All In Texas. You mentioned that he previously made an entrance on a horse. Picture Hangman coming in on a white horse like Gandalf the White.
Nice. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
Let's
that.
do it. Book it.
Yeah. Book it.
Book it.
TK, you have my number. Write the check.
Yeah, sure.
Put Deb's name on it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is an exciting time for AEW. I think Dave says it every week. Every week, Dave on Busted Open is like, this is a big dynamite for AEW. This is a big dynamite, and it really is. I think AEW, more than any other wrestling show that we all watch, it's like every week they have to come out and prove themselves.
Yeah,
every single week.
But that's not
it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. But yeah, every week they have to continue to prove themselves and show what they've got, because if they have one off week, it's like then it's all the progress is lost.
Yeah. It only takes one off shit to screw up 100 attaboys.
Yeah, exactly. It could be an hour and 45 minutes of incredible TV and one bad 15-minute segment, and everybody's like, "Oh, they're over, they're done. It's so bad.
Oh, I
this
can't watch
second
it.
rate."
I don't understand why do people watch the AEW. WWE ain't so much better! Exclamation point! Exclamation point!
So yeah, they really have to show out every single week. They have to put together a great product every single week, or else people will have short attention spans and give up on it.
Yeah.
So to speak.
I just wish they would. I just wish they would. They have a huge roster on both the male and female side, and there's no denying that. Tony has a lot of people on the books, but man, I look at what they're doing now, and it's fantastic on both sides and across the board. For the first time in a long time, the actual trios championships matter because of the ops. And now you have something brewing out of that, because you got Hook, who was one of the original members of the ops, flip it off Samoa Joe. Because and Joe's fault he got hurt, but what it is what it is. But that's the trios title, and again, that's my you own Ring of Honor, but yet you slap Ring of Honor in the face, which was known and has been known for the 6-man championships forever. Yeah. And Tony Khan's like, no, I need them on my show, so we have the trios titles. And I'm like, fuck you. And all that, but that's a different story. That's a different story.
That's another rant.
That's another rant. That's another rant. But even that now has there's interesting things, and I'm sorry, the two most entertaining people on AEW, in my opinion, they're both female, and that's Timeless Toni Storm and Harley Cameron.
Yes.
The men, as good as they are, and phenomenal in-ring and everything else, there is no Toni Storm or Harley Cameron on the men's side of the roster. There just isn't. And these women get it on such a level that everybody instantly gets better. And Harley, especially, who came in kind of a more of an attraction than anything else, and is she great in ring? No. I mean, you're not
She's
going to see
getting
it.
there.
She absolutely is developing and getting there, but she doesn't have to be.
Right.
And not yet anyway. She'll have the chance to become a great in-ring wrestler. But for right now, people are absolutely clued in and interested and participating in anything she does. And Toni Storm is Toni Storm. And God bless that Cobb Eating Salad RJ City for basically crafting a masterpiece with her. And Toni absolutely 100% living the gimmick because it's absolute gold every time. And just it's one of those things when you just think, oh, okay, this is kind of played out. They come out with something different and more,
right.
And even that, now we're finally seeing the match that we probably have wanted to see since they both arrived in the same company, and Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné.
Yeah.
And
I'm really excited for that. Yeah. Everybody's been clamoring for that matchup.
And the build up to it is going to be very good.
Yeah, we have a good chunk of time until All In. So, that's another thing that I feel like AEW has kind of subtly improved upon is, for quite a while with AEW, we were so used to very quick pay-per-view cycles.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned before, they've done a better job of having storylines that go beyond just pay-per-view to pay-per-view that kind of extend through. And now we have, from Double or Nothing to All In, we have a good, 6-7 week stretch.
Sure.
So it's not like, previously where we were almost used to 3 to 4 weeks between pay-per-views. We have a good month and a half, nearly 2 months.
Yeah.
Until All In, where they have a really good chance to build some great storylines until we finally see these matches.
Yeah, absolutely. But switch back to WWE for a minute. We had a promo last night on SmackDown to end the show. The quarterback has returned. Singing song because you all know it. Adrenaline, something, Cody Rhodes.
Shout out to Downstate.
Yes, but
making the greatest wrestling theme ever.
Yes, but you had Cody and Jimmy Uso. 4 letters, 1 word. Yeah, that guy. With John Cena and Logan Paul, and I didn't think. Now, Mark Henry was very critical on it today on Busted Open. I didn't think it was too bad because we're still on the build. We know the animosity and everything. We know the story so far because they've done such a good job telling the story. But I didn't think it was that bad of a promo.
We can disagree on that.
Okay. It's my opinion. If you have a counterpoint, by all means.
Okay, so I'm just not into it. I'm sorry. I'm just not. I'm not into it.
What aren't you into it?
Care. Like, I don't know. It's difficult for me because over the years, I back in this big PG era, Cena era, I was not a Cena fan. Obviously, most people that weren't children were not Cena fans. And we used to make fun of my friend Jake all the time for being a Cena fan. In fact, it actually just came up on my Facebook memories the other day. It was like, oh my God, it was so long ago. It was maybe 14, 15, 16 years ago. Me and Jake were playing we were playing Nerf darts. We were shooting each other with Nerf dart guns in his basement in the dark, and I hit him square in the forehead. And the picture just popped up on my Facebook memories, and in the background of the picture is his John Cena "You Can't See Me" poster on his basement wall. Which this is my John Cena story that I wanted to tell like weeks ago and forgot. One very drunken night when we were making fun of him for being a John Cena fan, he ripped the Cena poster off of his wall. But yeah, like I wasn't a John Cena fan, and then over time I became a John Cena fan as he got into movies. I was like, this guy is fucking hilarious. And like we've all over the years seen like a more real side of him as a person, not the child-friendly John Cena character. And a lot of us grew to love him for that. And now he like wants to come out and try to be a heel. And I'm sorry, but I'm just not like, I don't buy it. Like I'm just not buying into it.
Well, here's the thing from my perspective on that, and I do agree with you, because for years we have all thought about and tried to fantasy book the John Cena heel turn. It has to happen, and now it's really a case, to me, it's a case of careful what you wish for, and now we have it. And it's like, what the fuck is this?
Although it's not really careful what you wish for, because it could have been so much better.
Right.
And if The Rock wouldn't have taken himself out of the entire story. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing with me.
Dwayne going to do Dwayne things.
Like, and I'm saying I'm sorry, like fucking Mongrovian.
Yes. Yes, you sound like that crazy old man. Who shout out?
True.
Real quick, shout out to Mongrovian Mike, who is entertaining fellow nation member Dirty from Texas out in Long Island.
Yes. Going to Creative Pro tonight.
Yeah, Creative Pro.
To see our friend Bear Bronson.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, Dad's friend. Well, he's our friend too. But
he's all of our friend.
Yes.
But yeah,
and Gabby's on that show too, right?
Yes.
Naomi herself is on that show.
Naomi.
And he stayed at luxurious Castle Mongrovia, which is highly rated on Airbnb.
Yes. So shout out to Mongrovian and Dirty in Texas, spending some quality time together, going to some wrestling.
Go fuck yourself, Neil. I don't live in Long Island. Anyway.
I'm just like so when the heel turn happened, everybody was talking about how it was probably the best heel turn since Hulk Hogan, blah blah blah. It was incredibly well executed. And then it's like the whole why never happened. We spend so many hours listening to Busted Open, and Bully and Tommy specifically, and Mark too, but Bully and Tommy more so because they obviously spent a lot of time with Paul Heyman. We hear them talk about how important the why is. And we never got that why. It never happened. It was completely dropped. And then The Rock acted like it wasn't even needed. And honestly, that made me go, okay, I don't care anymore then.
But here's my counter to that. You're right. We don't have the why.
Bye.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
Anyway. We don't have the why, but my caveat is we don't have the why yet.
Honestly, though, I'm no longer interested in it.
Okay, that's
I'm
fair.
Just not.
Right.
If it goes there at some point, okay. I'm no longer interested in it. I'd honestly prefer to move on to something else.
Okay.
And we also kind of figure that, John Cena is going to be done at the end of the year in December. So we have 6 months to go. It's kind of assumed by most people that by the end of the year, he's gonna turn back face in some way to have a nice send off or whatever. It may not happen that way. Who knows? So it's almost kind of like I'm just not really buying into him being a bad guy when we figure that he's gonna go soon back to being the good guy that we were used to seeing and have a nice send off for retirement. Like I just and honestly, with his promo, like I just rewatched it before we went live. With his promo from last night on SmackDown, it I don't know. It doesn't make me feel anything.
See,
and wrestling is all about feeling, negative or positive. Wrestling is all about feeling. And I'm sitting there watching it going, okay. Like, that's not how I should be watching wrestling.
I have enough faith in creative and the product that they're going to do something or have something at some point that sucks us all right back in. But I'm okay. But also, I'm in the very minority. I don't think this is over at the end of the year. It doesn't end with a Cena farewell. Oh, this is my. I don't. I think this goes.
This is your life.
That if they did that, only if they do it with Mick Foley. Only if we have Foley.
Okay. Then I'm buying in.
Yes, then I'm there 100% because Foley is good and Foley is God.
Yeah.
But I don't think I have a feeling, and this is just me on myself. No one else even knows about this, so I'll put it out here now. I think this goes to WrestleMania next year.
Okay.
Somehow, some way. Obviously, I think they're going to hold to the fact that Cena is not going to be an in-ring competitor. And that's the key parts of this statement because he said he's leaving and taking the title with them. And the general thing is he's not going to be a full-time or an in-ring competitor anymore. But that has absolutely no bearing on him still not being involved somehow, some way. And I don't think it's over. I don't think it's over at the end of the year.
He did make it clear, like when he came back and announced his retirement tour, he did make it clear that he's not completely going away forever. This is just going to be the end of him in the ring.
Right.
Because he's getting older, his body can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, he did specifically say something about like, the t-shirt and jorts thing, like, that's going to be over. Like you probably will more see me in a suit type of deal.
Sure.
So maybe that is something, maybe that is a clue for the future come next year that maybe they do go back and have Cena in some sort of authority figure role or something wearing a suit. But I don't know, like even if they do that, I no longer have any interest in the whole like Cena siding with The Rock, taking Cody's soul story. I don't have any interest. Like The Rock did ruin it, honestly. And,
okay.
I've always loved The Rock. I've always been a huge Rock fan.
Well,
but he did ruin it.
Well, I have to believe because I have no reason to think otherwise. Even as, for lack of a better term, lame as all this has been, they're going to do something. They're going to do something that sucks everybody right back in because we have plenty of previous track record and story that they, how many times have we sat here, especially with the bloodline? Oh, that's it. This is, and then bang, something happens on a Raw or a SmackDown or at the end of a pay-per-view, and we're all right back in. And I feel
however, I credit that to Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman, obviously everybody knows, huge creative driving force in the bloodline. I credit that to Paul Heyman, that the chapters of the bloodline story, we did see those periods of time where it kind of dipped and we were like, okay, what's going on here? There's nothing's really happening. And then something happened that brought us back in.
Right.
But to my knowledge, it's not been said that Paul Heyman has anything to do with this storyline. It appears anyway, that there may be some sort of creative struggle differences going on between The Rock and Triple H.
Could be. Anything is possible.
Even with The Rock's comment on Dave's Instagram post, when he invited Dave into the creative meetings, he did not mention Triple H in that post at all.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like with this, there's some sort of creative differences happening.
Is it the work?
It very well could be. It very well could be.
But if you're reading that, if you read it at face value, you're absolutely right. But then, my crazy wrestling brain, thank you, Tommy Dreamer, kicks in and says, is this a work? Is this a work of the work? Is this new kayfabe?
But then it kind of goes back to a lot of discussions that's had gone on about the Death Riders. Like, okay, if this is the intentional story all along, do you really want your intentional story to make fans disinterested? Because that's what's happening.
Right. But it again, have to let it play out. Right now, it's not great. It's not, I'm not on every word of going on with that whole story right now. But like I said, I have no reason to believe that somewhere along the line they're going to twist something or drop something that brings us all right back in. And all that. But also, same with WWE, and people moving around. You now have Julia on SmackDown after a very short NXT run, which she was champion and all that. And now you have the most recent champion, Stephanie McMahon, coming to Raw. Oh, by the way, someone else from NXT is now a fixture on Raw. One, Roxanne Perez. And this is fantastic what they're doing with her and the Judgment Day. And we are all Fergal right now. We are all Finn Balor with his facial expressions and reactions, watching the interaction between her and Dom and Liv. And we are all Finn right now. I know I am. And
see, this is what has me bought in. This is something that has me bought in. Because yes, you are totally right. Like watching Finn's face in the background of every shot, he's like,
well, we
love it.
We have literally watched this again, talking about story arcs. We have watched this story arc of the Judgment Day from Damian and Rhea and Finn to now Finn with JD and now Dom and now Liv. And the whole time was this originally kind of was set out or played out to be Finn's group.
Right.
He was the leader. And we watched, time after time that he is, as much as he tries and all that, he is not. And it's finally getting to him. And he has tried many different traditional ways to assert himself as a leader or in that, and it all have been thwarted by themselves one way or another. Well, now he has got the perfect weapon to make his plan work, and that is in someone this tall, Roxanne Perez. And I think it's great, and especially being a fan of Roxy as long as I've been, all the way back to her indie days and Ring of Honor days.
Yeah.
And I was always concerned, like many people were, was she ready or is she ready for the main roster? Absolutely. But I was always afraid where they're going to put her, how they're going to bring her in. And now they have, and it took a little while because she's been more than ready for a while and basically accomplished everything she could twice in NXT. But now they have her in the spot and in the position where, okay, this is going to work. This is going to be great. And okay, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And, you know, we remember the little, you know, whatever you want to call it, slight altercation that Bully and Booker T got into over this.
Yes.
You know, Bully had said if Roxy moves up to the main roster, is she ready? Yeah, but I don't want to see her move up if there's not something solid creatively for her. And that's absolutely the truth. That's absolutely right. And I think they waited till the right moment. You know, they were very smart with that. Keep her in NXT until you have a solid direction.
I think that's
going to go in.
Honestly, I think that's going to be the plan going forward.
I hope so.
Julia and Stephanie are kind of an anomaly because they were, you know, all they needed. They didn't need development. All they needed was to get used to and comfortable to WWE style wrestling and TV,
and get the fans used to them. Give some time for the fans to get to know them. Because if someone appears on Raw or SmackDown and the fan base isn't aware of who they are, it might not, you know, have the success that you'd like. Starting them off on NXT is a great choice. Help the fan base get to know them, watch them over the course of a few months. And then when they move up to Raw or SmackDown, then the fans are excited to see them on a bigger stage.
Yes.
That is pretty smart. But yeah, like we said, as long as there's a creative direction for them, we've seen so many examples in the past of people moving to Raw or SmackDown from NXT, and there's not really a solid storyline or anything for them, and they just end up fizzling out, and then 6 months down the road they get released.
Right.
So yeah, I think with Roxy, and you know, I'm really hopeful for Stephanie and Julia that they can move up to main roster and have success. All three of them are just absolutely incredible.
Yes. And further, my point is you just had these three move up to the main roster, so to speak. There's no drop off in NXT with them to be gone. There is, when they say that's the best women's division in wrestling, I agree with it. You look at top to bottom in that NXT women's roster, you can easily fire off 10 names that you can legitimately see as a champion there without even really trying. And that's kind of what NXT has established, that, you know, people that you're seeing are going to be on the main roster and they are going to be big players because it's a proven track record. And these three moving up are just, you know, three more of the names that have made it. But switching gears yet again, because my brain is very scattered at the moment, but we had another quote unquote debut also on Dynamite that people kind of went, whoa, who the F is that? Oh, that's the Toxic Spider. That is the KLA or Thekla as Thekla. And again, now they've been doing the little spider things on AEW TV and stuff, and it's one of the things, if you follow any wrestling social media and stuff, everybody knew she was coming over. We just didn't know exactly when. And for those who aren't familiar, this was a major name in Stardom, and basically the best way I can put it, and somebody in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, she was kind of the heir apparent to Julia in Stardom. She went when Julia moved over and left and went to Marigold, and then came to WWE. Tekla was kind of going to be that next big name in stardom, and she became that, and now she's all elite and everything. But that's a girl with a very, and you saw it. This is a girl with a very striking, no pun intended, but striking presence. This is something way different than what we have seen in even any of the Joshi wrestlers that have come over that were in Japan previously or working in Japan. This is a very different look for them. And she definitely made people take notice, to the point where she was trending on Twitter because people were like, who is this girl?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the reaction you want. That's I already saw people pretty much immediately afterwards going like, oh, we need promo packages. We need a video, but tell me who she is, blah, blah, blah. That will come. Be patient.
Yeah.
But as far as just a first, just the first glimpse in her debut, I think that was so well executed. We had the little spider teasers for the last several weeks. So anyone that took notice of that, could have, if they were so inclined, jumped on their Google machine and tried to, figure out like, okay, what is this about? What is this? But even if you didn't take the time to look her up beforehand. I really didn't. I'm gonna go down the YouTube rabbit hole at some point shortly, but like I had just seen rumblings for the last, month or so. Oh, this Tekla person is coming to AEW. I had never heard of her before. I don't watch Stardom. But just from her appearance on Dynamite this week, I was like, oh my God, like that, incredibly impressive. Just how quick she was in her movements and just her look, like you look at her and you're like, oh my God, like who is this?
Which easier to wrestle.
Right. And that's the reaction you want. Like, we will there. I'm sure there'll be promos. I'm sure we'll get video packages with footage of her past and all that blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
But just for a first impression, that made the fans go, oh my God, who is this?
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what she can do in the ring.
And not that they have the greatest track record with debuts, but I'll give credit where it's due. They got this one right. Absolutely. AEW absolutely got this one right. And they got way more than that 2 or 3 minutes they had with her than I think any 5-minute or 3-minute video package would have done.
We don't need a video package before we see her on screen. We just don't. The people that like clamor for that, I think it's bizarre. Like, we can just the way they did it, for me personally, I think was perfect. Like, make the fans go, oh my God, who is that? And then that makes us want to tune in next week to see said video package. We don't need the video package beforehand.
Exactly.
They're doing a good job of doing little things like that makes us want to tune in the following week.
And again, keeping with the theme of different people and different promotions and stuff. We had and as near as I can tell, because we talked about this, we had our first father-daughter tag team match in TNA. Santino Marella, the director of authority, with his real life daughter, Ariana Grace, who was on NXT. So, and front row swerved us all again because he was in Canada refereeing the match.
Yeah, how about that?
So, but think of that for a second. Here is a former WWE star, now TNA star, on screen and in a match with a NXT / WWE signed talent with a former WWE referee refereeing it.
Right. Incredible.
This timeline in wrestling is, and Front Row says it all the time, this timeline is Bizarre World times 10.
Yeah.
Because it further emphasizes anything can happen. Just announced this past week for GCW show during SummerSlam weekend. You see the name that was added to who was on that show.
Which one?
Not only do we have the Virtuosa, my OG Jersey girl, Deonna Purrazzo, on that card, but also, and thank you for your service always, one bulletproof Steve Macklin, who is from Rutherford, New Jersey, by way of the world famous Monster Factory, which is 4 blocks from me that way. But he has now been added to that show as well. So again, here is a TNA talent and a AEW talent participating in the GCW show. Now, it's not unusual to see that happen. We have all seen, Bloodsport in the past and know that Josh Barnett has an absolute knack and ability to negotiate things to get people that we see in other companies on his shows. But here is GCW. Now, granted, it's a great tie-in. It's, basically Steve's hometown and all that, and Deonna from Hackettstown, even though they both live in Florida now, but we don't go into that. But again, but to see people, just for the fact that we can see that, and AEW traditionally has been kind of tight with allowing their contracted talent out to do other shows. I mean, yes, they can do appearances and all that, but actual other, even indie shows or anything like that, they got to get approvals way ahead of time for that. And also, all depending, they can be pulled from them commitments at any time because they are contracted talent. So to see that, coming across again, further emphasizes that anything can happen at any time.
Yeah, it's crazy. We say that every week that, we see matchups like that every week that you're like, this is crazy that this is happening. Like Santino and his daughter, Ariana Grace. Like I sat there watching that on Thursday night going like, is this the first father-daughter team? Like I couldn't recall like a legitimate father-daughter teaming together before. And that's pretty awesome. And across the board, like not only with the TNA crossover, but in AEW, Jesus, last week we had Speedball and Okada. Whoever freaking thought that we would see Speedball versus Okada? Like, come on.
My weekly PSA.
It's insane.
My weekly PSA, Brass Monkey for Speedball's entrance. Thank you.
Yes.
But
it's just crazy. And like going back to talent kind of moving all around, it's a lot of people seem to still like see it as such a big deal whenever we hear someone's leaving one company and possibly going to another company. You got to get used to it, folks. It's going to be happening constantly now. It's just the way that wrestling is right now, with not only WWE and TNA and AEW and GCW and all of the indies that are really killing it and putting on successful shows, like and New Japan. Like we're gonna see a lot of movement from talent from company to company, and I really think it's kind of like a new era of a different style of territory system.
And now adding to the mix, especially nothing for nothing, but Worlds Collide from WWE the night or during the day before Money in the Bank, that's shaping up to be an incredible show. And there's another aspect to it. You have AAA now part of the WWE fold, that you're going to see all kinds of talent from AAA Now in WWE programming, same thing with CMLL, with AEW. You know, these rosters and these companies, you know, there is no forbidden door, preventative portal. Everything is wide open. Because why? Because it's great business. It's great business for everybody. For the talent. And it's really, you know, we used to get very bad for when people got released or their contracts was over and not renewed with certain companies and stuff. That it's like, oh no, you know, but right now it's kind of a buyer's market right now. If you're good or if you have that much of a bankable name and a that much of a following, you can kind of write your own ticket or you know, make, you know, as I like to put it, follow the Matt Cardona model. Right. You can go out and make a shit ton of money working where you want, how you want, with who you want. Literally, these companies will, you know, if you're that good, these companies will do business with you. And it's and more importantly, it's not just big names, it's trickling down. You know, you have more indie talent, especially with the WWID program and stuff like that. You have these indie talents that now that may or may not, I mean, they may eventually get to that next step, but now they're absolutely have a stamp on that. Yeah, you're making the next step. And so that in itself, you know, is bringing in all kinds of new talent that we may or may not have seen before. And
there's just so much talent to go around. You know, there's more wrestlers that deserve a spotlight than there are roster spaces on all of the big companies.
And I'm of the opinion that competition is good, because you're right. There is only so many segments on television. There are so many spots available. And when you have such a large pool of talented people, there are no days off. There is no slacking off, or you better be 100% on point with everything at all times, because there are 10 people literally right behind you that are ready to take that spot. And
exactly.
I mean,
when AEW's Forbidden Door pay-per-view first started, it was like, holy crap, this is crazy. And that's why they called it Forbidden Door, because at that time, it was something new and different. Obviously, now over the course of the last few years, it's become so commonplace that it's not the shocker that it was a few years ago to see, you know, crossover talent or joint shows like that. You know, AEW has the partnerships with New Japan and with CMLL. And now WWE is kind of doing their own version of that with the partnership with TNA. And now that they bought out AAA, you know, we've got kind of two global alliances going on.
Right.
Where it's like Forbidden Door is kind of an unnecessary term.
Right.
No, because it's not even a thing anymore.
Now it's just a random Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah, honestly,
it's crazy.
Honestly, you know, it's cool in the moment, but you're right. It doesn't have that luster. Like, ooh, this is, you know, something good we haven't seen.
Yeah.
Now it's commonplace. You know, just like and wrestling is always evolving. That's how it stays as popular as it has and drives in, you know, brings in new fans, because it is always evolving. You know, perfect case in point. Women's wrestling has never been better globally right now. You have literally talent from all over the world competing and being featured prominently. We're a long way from gravy boat and bra and panties matches. They are part of the distant past that, you know, and it's taken a while. Don't get me wrong. It's taken a while, but, you know, you look at right now, I'll argue to say probably the number one merch seller on AEW.com is Toni Storm. I mean, I don't know that. But I would have to think that, you know,
I would assume she's up there, yeah.
You know, and I'll bet you Harley Cameron is up there as well.
Yeah.
And you look at, on the WWE side, they're proving that it's been a progression because they had to work so hard. Women in general had to work so hard to get to that point, with the women's revolution, with the original 4 horsemen, to bring wrestling up to like, wow, they can main event, they can wrestle instead. We have now even moved past that to a point where somebody like a Harley Cameron, like I said, not great in the ring. She'll not give you a Dave Meltzer fucking 5-star match, but she's entertaining as hell. Same with Chelsea Green. Chelsea Green is a phenomenal in-ring wrestler, folks. Everybody forgets that. Chelsea Green can absolutely go in the ring. She doesn't have to. Why?
No.
Because she is so freaking entertaining that you don't care if she can wrestle. You just want to see
that's
her.
The thing. So I came across this clip again on Instagram earlier today when she was on Chris Van Vliet. And, Chelsea said, I don't want to be the female Cody. I want to be the female Miz. She knows that her career trajectory is not going to be kind of the top person in the company. Like she said, that's going to be Bianca or Rhea or, whoever. Right. Like those are the people that's going to be the top champion in the company. She's fully aware, and she has enough self-awareness to know that like her position is to be incredibly entertaining, make a great living for herself. And that's where she compared herself to The Miz. She said, hey, the Miz has an amazing life. He's got a beautiful house and a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, and he gets to show up and do all these fun appearances, and he loses and nobody cares. Like people still find him entertaining, and he's built an incredible life for himself without being that top, Cody Rhodes, John Cena type. And that's what Chelsea strives for. Like she knows, like that's her place. That's what she can do. That's her goal, is she can make a lot of money and have a great life and a great career. And she's not destined to be the top person like a Rhea Ripley or Bianca Belair. She's incredibly entertaining, and that's her place.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And one more point before we start to wrap up. Speaking of women's wrestling,
this long, we can keep going.
You know how I know that women's wrestling is thriving and succeeding, not only within wrestling fans, but in society in general? I see it all the time because I'm in Pennsylvania, and a few years ago, Pennsylvania approved for girls wrestling to be in schools. I personally know several people whose daughters are on the wrestling team in their schools, in middle school and high school. Personally, I know several people, like their daughters are wrestling. And we've come to a point now where we have a generation of young girls, even if they're not specifically wrestling fans like we are that watch every week. They've grown up with social media, knowing who Rhea Ripley is, knowing who Bianca Belair is, knowing who Becky Lynch is. They've grown up seeing these role models of badass female wrestlers who are not just out there in a bra and panties being a sideshow act. They're legitimate athletes and role models. That's how I know that women's wrestling is successful.
And we're even seeing that crossover in other sports now, because I don't know about PA, but here in Jersey, they have approved, and they're going to start having high school girls flag football.
Yeah.
And flag football, especially female flag football, is big across all of the country. The Undertaker's daughter plays flag football. Him and Michelle's little girl plays flag football. Like they have pictures of him watching his daughter play flag football. So but again, it took us a while to get there, and I'm glad it did. And as we're starting to wrap up, I'm going to be doing something very cool with my own daughter, who is in the chat tonight. But one of the things that I look for, especially when she was younger, not to go into a deep hole because, but her mother and I divorced when she was very young. So there was a time that she didn't see me all the time, but we were always able to bond over 3 things: auto racing, MMA, and wrestling. And my constant goal, or my look for, especially when she was younger, was who can I kind of steer her towards to look at. I didn't want her to be wrapped up with Instagram models and influencers as a young girl. I wanted to give her, good, strong, positive role models to look at and say, hey, look at what this one's doing. This could be you. And I always came back to racing, MMA, and wrestling. So
yeah,
I'm glad to see that it's evolved way past, because I wouldn't be able to do that during the Attitude Era.
Right.
I honestly, I wouldn't. I mean, I'm very, very few exceptions. But and even then, I probably wouldn't, because they weren't getting the spotlight that they deserved or needed. It was all about the TNA and not the wrestling, but all that. So it's one of these things that, while I enjoy all wrestling, women's wrestling and how it's developed, I have always been a champion for and solidly behind, because I have a daughter, and I always wanted to give her something positive to look at, instead of just random Instagram models and shit like that.
Yeah. Having met your daughter, she's definitely not. I'm guessing she was never the type that would be looking at Instagram models for inspiration.
Not while I was around, anyway. It's scary how much she's like me.
In my own experience as a wrestling fan, I first started watching wrestling during the John Cena era, and I don't really recall ever getting into any of the women's storylines until Paige came along. I think Paige and AJ Lee was probably the first time that I ever felt that there was women on the screen that not only I could identify with, but that their storylines made me interested.
Yeah.
And I'll fully admit that before that, the women's match was the bathroom break, the snack break, because it just wasn't that interesting to me for the type of woman that I am. When Paige and AJ Lee came along, that was it for me. I even dyed my hair dark blue because of Paige.
That absolutely tracks. You went for the batshit crazy ones. Well, we all did, so. But that's cool. No, but again, that's a connection. They were both in their own way very different from what we were seeing, especially on WWE at that time, and they weren't that far removed from gravy boat matches and all that. And not to say that your Trish Stratus's, your Stacy Keeblers, your Tori Wilsons, and the women of that Divas era and those previously, my one I always point to was Mickie James. She went through that. I mean, her character introduction was to be Trish Stratus's quasi lesbian stalker.
Yeah, I don't think I was watching then.
Yeah,
if I was, I just don't remember.
But it's like, did a porno writer pitch this story? Because
likely,
but at the time, that's what was to most of us, and I'm included, because you got that 18 to 49.
What people wanted at the time.
Demographic was, mean I can see on regular TV that I gotta pay $9.99 a month for? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm in. But I digress. And fortunately, I mean, we can't ignore history because it did happen. But thank God we have moved completely past all of that to now that we have women in prominent roles, women in main eventing. They finally are bringing back the revolution pay-per-view in Atlanta for
Can we please get Bianca versus Rhea for that, please?
Can we get a three-way Jade, Bianca, and Rhea? How about that?
Yeah.
Just think about that. We go and again, that match. Those matches alone for that pay-per-view are going to be because they're going to bring people in. You're going to see older wrestlers come in. You may see a Mickie James come back in, a Michelle McCool come back in, or any one of the past female wrestlers, plus all the new talent that have influxed their way in. They're already touting for Worlds Collide. You have Chick Tormenta and I never say her name right. Dasis. In a tag match against Stephanie Becker and Lola Vice, who was actually Vala Laredo, former MMA fighter, but so that in itself shows you how wide the playing field can be now. And again, it's yet another reason why wrestling right now, as people, especially on Raw, whoever the person is, shout out to them, that has the wrestling is great sign that always shows up on camera.
Wrestling is great. I like wrestling.
Yes.
that's a Rosenberg thing.
Yes. And
shout out to Neil. Neil loves Peter Rosenberg, by the way.
He does. But we went way over, and I don't care.
We went way over. The only reason we're going this late is because Collision is not on until after
the basketball
is
game.
Over.
Go Pacers.
Excuse me?
Go Pacers.
Y'all know I don't give a shit about basketball, but go Knicks.
Not this year. Try again next year.
Anyway.
Come Monday, you're making reservations on the golf course.
Go Knicks, and I hope the Knicks kick so much ass tonight that the game ends early so that AEW comes on sooner.
All right, good
Can
point.
they do that? Can they do like I remember when I was in high school, like specifically in softball, if the game was such a massive blowout, like they would mercy rule it and end the game early. Can they do that in NBA? Can they do that? Can the Knicks score so many freaking points that they just say, all right, this is enough. Let's put AEW on.
Yeah, I don't think so. A lot of money being exchanged on various sports on all that. So I'm thinking we're getting, even if it is that massive a blowout, we're getting every painful second counting down until AEW can actually go on air. But
fine.
All right. Well, sulk about it now until Collision comes on, and then you'll be better. But in the meantime, tell the folks that how they can interact with you and get with you on the social media.
At That's So Debonair, the Twitter machine, the Instagram, the Blue Sky, all the places. The link is in the bio. Y'all already know that. Click it. That's it.
Click the
That's it.
Okay. And of course, we'll strike that last one post. Of course, I am at
post.
Yeah. Well, K-Babe, sister K-Babe. We have a team here, remember?
A team? There's a social media team? Who are the other members?
I know. Don't lie to your audience. Paul Heyman's #1 rule. Never lie to the audience. But anyway, you can get me at Instagram and Twitter at Twisted Metal Fab. Follow the exploits of the newly booked and soon to be debuting Most Dangerous Weapon in all of professional wrestling. Of course, I'm talking about the AK9K, the Ass Kicker 9000, debuting soon in Florida next month. And you can catch up with him and follow all his exploits at Ass Kicker 9K on Instagram. And as I alluded to, I am doing a very special Nation's Corner on location. Worlds are colliding, so to speak. I will be sitting down with the Nation's Corner resident medical advisor and one of its newest members. And she also happens to be a huge wrestling fan now. Yeah. And last but certainly not least, she was also my daughter. And Brooke and I are going to be sitting down and we're going to be talking about her crazy wrestling dad and how it's made her into a somewhat crazy wrestling fan. Not quite. She's working on it, but and we're going to talk about not only that, but the generational gap. Her being a newer fan and younger fan, and me being a fan longer than she's been alive. We're going to kind of sit down and figure out, what's what and who's who, and have a conversation about wrestling in general and how we see it. So I'm looking forward to that. That will be debuting on Nation's Corner socials very soon. So
I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be cool.
We're sitting down tomorrow night to record it, and we'll probably get it out within the coming week. And I'm very excited. This is an idea that I have thought about for quite a while, and going to make it happen. So on that note, Deb, thank you for joining me tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you, Corner family and fans, and we will see you all next